everyone, and welcome to our monthly webinar. My name is Travis Spear. I'm a hard money lender and full-time real estate investor. Each month we bring you a webinar with current and relevant information to help you grow your knowledge base in business. This may be through a presentation like tonight, or we may simply interview one of our expert friends, dive deep into how they got started, where their investing has taken them, and what they're up to now. We may or may not record each session, so it's important to register and get on early so you don't miss out. You have the opportunity to ask questions on the webinar, and we'll do our best to answer all of the questions. I want to say thank you to everyone who's joining us this evening. I know you gave up your time, so I'm going to do my best to bring you as much value as possible. Tonight should be easy as we're talking about a very relevant topic in how to analyze a real estate deal. The webinar is brought to you by Pine Financial Group. Pine Financial is Colorado and Minnesota's premier hard money lender. Pine focuses on the needs of Colorado and Minnesota real estate investors. We're investors ourselves. We know what it takes to get deals closed. Everyone at Pine Financial Group is dedicated to the success of our clients. We only experience success when our clients are succeeding. So we have a habit of telling you when you should do a deal or maybe when you should pass on it. I think you'll benefit from our honesty and integrity if you choose to work with us. So tonight on the webinar, I'm going to do my very best to answer all of your questions. If you just type them in like you did the feedback on the sound, I'm going to stop a couple times during the presentation and answer the questions. Tonight's an important topic. Analyzing real estate deals is a first step to any successful transaction. I'm often surprised at how few people are proficient in running the numbers. If you struggle to quickly run numbers, I assure you that you're not alone. We see it often. So many formulas, rules, different types of financing, measures of profit. It's easy to get confused. But on this webinar, we'll run through the numbers and formulas and help you analyze the deal regardless of how you're financing it. We may cover some other things like quick formulas, accurate closing costs, calculated holding costs, making sure the deal meets your profit, net minimum profit, and what net profit looks like. So let me start by telling you just a little bit about myself for those of you who maybe haven't had the opportunity to see me present before. My name is Travis Spear. Like I mentioned, I'm a hard money lender, full-time real estate investor. I started real estate investing in 2008. Started doing some fix and flips with my father. Shortly after that, I got my real estate license. I got that in 2009. I let it go in 2013. It's often a hot topic of whether or not real estate investors should hold their real estate license or not. The type of deals I was participating in, I just didn't find much value in it and had too many people ask me to drive them around town looking at properties. Just wasn't my focus. I started making hard money loans in 2009, so I've been with Pine Financial Group for just over 7 years now, and I really watched the company grow and I've had a really good time doing it. I own 12 rental properties in the city, mostly in the city and county of Denver, with a few in the suburbs. Own and manage those properties myself. And if anybody who's seen me speak before knows I really enjoy rental property. I just think it's a great way to build wealth. I love the cash flow that comes in every month, and it's one of my passions for sure. Done a handful of fix and flips, but was never really my focus. Once I did a few fix and flips and I saw that I could hold it and cash flow $600–700 a month, I decided to start keeping properties. My current focus is new construction projects, infill new construction, where I might buy a lot, scrape the existing structure, and build a handful of units. My last project was 7 units. The project I'm working on now is 8 units, infill new construction in Denver. So exciting times to be in real estate. It's been really good to grow a portfolio and that kind of stuff, so it's fun. And hopefully I can bring you some value this evening with that experience. So first we should look at how TV shows how you run the numbers. It's always fun. You know, most of us got into the business because of something we saw on TV. For me, it was Flip That House with Richard Davis. I was watching it when I was in college, was so intrigued by how it worked. I grew up in construction, so I had a pretty good idea of how that side of it worked. But the fix and flip it's sexy, right? That's why everyone wants to do it. So this is how they show it, right? They purchased the house for $200, did $50,000 in repairs, sold it for $300, and profited $50,000. I'm sure that most people can relate to have seen this on TV, and you start to ask yourself, what about the holding costs? What about the costs for the agent? What about all these costs? And then once you learn more about the business, you pretty quickly become less interested in the fix and flip stuff that you see on TV. So let's talk about those numbers and what does that look like to get a deal done. There's multiple steps in the process, and following them is really important in my opinion. First, of course, you have to select the subject property so you know what you're running the numbers on. That could be an MLS listing that you saw, something that your agent sent you. It could be an off-market deal that you got a phone call on. It could be a wholesale deal that hit your inbox. And so what are the next steps? First thing to consider when you find the subject property is to know what your exit strategy is. Is this a property you're going to buy, fix, and resell, buy, fix, and refinance? Is it a rental property? Is it a scrape? We have to look at those things. Google Map. I love using Google Maps and Google Street Views, and we'll show a little bit more of that as we get going here. I just think it's a great opportunity to keep yourself from wasting a lot of time. Take a look at the general numbers on the deal, the information that you're provided just from sitting at your desk or maybe looking at your smartphone, and getting an idea of whether or not that deal would work for you. Consider your financing. Everybody has different abilities to finance deals. I've used hard money, I've used bank financing, I've used other people's money, I've used partnering. So there's a lot of ways to finance a deal. So you need to consider that, because really it's a first step in looking at a deal is how you're going to actually get the deal closed. Run the numbers, make sure that after you have the information in your financing, you need to take another look at it and say, is this a deal that makes sense for me? And then you're going to visit the property and verify what you may or may not already know. Then you're going to contract it or you're going to pass on it. If you do contract it, you're going to do some post-contract due diligence. And then you're going to move forward and get to closing. So let's cover those. So the subject property, like I said, this might be something that you found on the MLS. Now, we have a nationwide audience, so some people in Denver might laugh when we say on the MLS, because those deals are very difficult to find. Other people, in some of our other markets that we lend in, like Minnesota, we're still seeing a ton of great deals on the MLS. So there's still opportunities there. We just have to figure out which one's going to work for you. Your deal might be a wholesale deal, and this is becoming more prevalent as you kind of get into the scene and you're networking a little bit more. You're starting to see some more of these deals hit your inbox, and as we'll go through today, exactly what I do from the time I see a wholesale deal hit my inbox to when I close on it. Might be an off-market deal. These would be handled just a little bit differently, but you're still going to follow the same process. Some of the information that you're able to get on the house before you sit down with the owner or contact the owner or get an opportunity to communicate might go in a little bit different steps, but you'll still need to get all the same information in order to be successful in closing the deal. Maybe it's a partner deal. Maybe you have somebody that you met at a networking meeting. They come to you and say, hey, I have this deal. What do you think? You need to run through the numbers and figure out if it'd be a good opportunity to work together. And that'll be important too, to understand the numbers if you're doing a deal like that. So exit strategy, we talked about. What are you going to do? Most of the things we cover here are going to kind of be in the fix and flip arena, but can be applicable to other types of exit strategies. Are you going to fix, rent, and refi? This is how I bought most of my rental properties. I'd buy the property with hard money, fix it up, and then get it rented out, and then refinance it to a Fannie or Freddie conventional loan, hopefully with little or no money out of pocket in the entire strategy, and build a rental portfolio. So does a property make sense to do that? That might be determined by price point, could be determined by location, could be determined by the amount of rent that you can get on that property, and all of that stuff's going to go into your due diligence process. Buy and hold. Maybe the deal, you're more of a traditional type of investor, and the deal is just simply purchasing the property, maybe cleaning it up a little bit and renting it out. And that'll how you analyze that deal will be much different than how a fix and flip investor will buy it. Scrape and build, like I shared, this is what I'm mostly focusing on now in my real estate investing, and it's been good for me. Cost of construction, zoning, how many units you can build, that kind of stuff is becoming, or is much more important in this arena. We'll barely touch on that as we get started here in analyzing the deal, but it's important to know what you're going to do with that property when it hits your inbox. So the reason I say that we're going to go to Google Maps first is because it tells you so much. You only have to get a wholesale deal that hits your inbox, jump in the car and drive and go look at it because you think it's a neighborhood that you're interested in, to get there and find that the train tracks run through the backyard, or the neighbor has cars stacked up in the backyard, or it's on a super busy street, or it backs to a gas station or something like that. You only have to do that once before you'll use Google Maps every time before you get in the car. Now, most of us, our time is valuable, so I can create the most amount of income sitting at my desk. I don't make it when I'm driving around town. And in most urban corridors or areas, I mean, if you're going to get in the car and go look at a property and get back to your office, I mean, you're talking about probably giving up upwards of an hour, which could be precious time when you might have the opportunity to analyze a different deal. So I always like to go to Google Maps first. Now, the webinar is a tad delayed based on what I see on my screen, so bear with me if the arrow is not lining up with exactly what you might expect it to. But what I took here was simply a screenshot of an area in Denver. And the reason I chose this is because there's a house, and I'm going to leave the mouse on it. I assume that you can see that, but maybe not. There's a house just north of 38th Avenue, just north of Just Breaks number 52. And when this thing came out as a wholesale deal a couple years ago, and when I remember when it came out, and I said, oh, that address is right there on Sheridan, just north of 38th. That's interesting. So I just pulled it up. And of course, this is in Denver. This is a pretty good area, kind of transitional. Prices are up. This is the place where people want to live because they can walk to different things, and a decent little area. But immediately you look at your influences. You have Sheridan, which is a busy road. This is a 4-lane road with a double yellow. 38th is very busy, another 4-lane road with the double yellow. You've got a stoplight here. You got the gas station here. I'm sure you'll never smell that when you're sitting on the front porch drinking your coffee. You have Just Breaks right next door to you. So location is the number one thing about real estate, right? Location, location, location. So if you get the opportunity to buy a property, the first thing you need to do is look at the location and get an idea of the influences that the location may bring. Is it a busy road? Is it a grocery store? Is it fast food? Is it a Just Breaks? Is it an auto shop over here? And one thing that we cover pretty intensely in our after repaired value class is knowing the difference of what a house is worth if it's here on Sheridan, which is the north-south major arterial here, or one block in, which is Zenobia, or 2 blocks in on Yates, and how far it is from the other cross street. Sometimes if you can just look at this real quick before you just do too much work on it, you can get a real good idea if it's a house that's going to make sense for you because the location is so important. So I love using Google Maps just to see where the property is. And of course, you're going to need to know how to get there, so you might as well just see how long it's going to take you. The other thing along the same lines is Street View. Google Street View is a great tool. This is a neighborhood up in Northeast Denver where I own a handful of houses, and I love Street View because you can pull it up. You can walk up and down the street. You can look at the houses. You can get an idea of the area and how, what shape the house is in. Now, this information is not always updated. If we look up in the upper left corner of this image, it says when this Street View was taken. I learned this a couple months ago. You can actually hit this drop down and you can change when the last footage was taken. So this one's in 2011, but let's say it was in 14, then you could go back and look when they drove past in 2012 or 2011 and see what's changed in the neighborhood and see how the houses are holding up and that kind of stuff. Google Street View is cool. You can drive up and down the streets. You can go to the neighbors. You can just kind of get a feel for what the neighborhood's like if you can't get a great feel from the top-down view on Google Maps. So now that you've looked at it at least on a map and got an idea of does this deal make any sense for me, you have to kind of take the first look of the numbers. So you're going to have your purchase. If it's listed on the MLS, you're going to have a list price. How long has it been listed? Is this house brand new on the market? This is something we need to get out there and make an offer on today when we know we're going to be highest and best. Or is this a deal that's been on the market for 2 or 3 months and you've seen a number of price drops and it looks like they're having trouble getting this house sold? So you have an idea of maybe how close you need to be to that list price. Are you in a market where there's very little inventory like we are here in the Denver market, and you know that the list price is really just a starting point for negotiation and you're likely going to be above that? And if that's the case and the list price already doesn't make sense for you, does it make sense to continue to do due diligence on this deal? If it's a wholesale deal, I was just talking about this in the office today. Sometimes on wholesale deals now, we're seeing the price or best offer. And I used to think in a slower market or best offer meant, I want to get 150 for this house, but I'll take the best offer, which might be a little bit lower than that. So maybe a low ball and you get a little bit better price on the deal. In our market now, I tend to think that 150 or best offer means if you're willing to give me 152 or 153, you're going to beat out some of the other wholesale buyers, and or maybe your better offer is that you can close quickly, but maybe you do or don't offer the amount. When I was first getting the business, wholesale deal price was the wholesale price. I mean, that's just what you paid. The deals made sense, and you got the deals closed. So look at that number and see if it makes sense, and try to get an idea of if there's room up or down. Does the deal make sense to move forward on? The repairs. This can be interesting. When I was buying houses pretty heavily in 2011, 12, 13, what I was doing was looking at the pictures on the MLS, mostly bank owned property at that time, to try to get an idea of what the repairs were going to be. Now, it was mostly buying to hold, although using the hard money fix and refinance strategy. So I would want to look at the pictures to get an idea of the repairs. This is a neighborhood where I own a handful of houses, so I know what it costs to repair them. So I could look through the pictures and get a real good idea of what it would cost. You know, is this a 20,000, 25, 30,000? Oh, is this in too good a shape to get a deal? The pictures can be very telling. So spend some time on that if they're available on the MLS or through a wholesaler. Do you know the area? I just was talking about the area that I knew pretty well, so I would just spend time knowing how much it cost me to rehab that house because I'd done it multiple times before. Do you have an estimate? Is there a wholesaler providing a number to you to give you kind of a rough idea of what it would cost to get that deal done? The after repaired value. This is an important one, and one that some people struggle with, but you know, in the grand scheme of analyzing a deal, I think the biggest challenge is estimating repairs accurately if you don't have a lot of experience. And the second one would be the after repaired value. And those who struggle with it typically rely on another agent or an agent to give them that information. And if you have to wait for an agent to provide you the after repaired value in a warm or hot market, it's going to be challenging to be successful. You need to learn and practice how to come up with the after repaired value so you can be successful with that. You're simply going to be looking at sold comps, you know, comparable properties, typically half to 1 mile, and within 6 months, maybe as far back as a year that have sold, depending on the market that you're in. You're going to look at some active comps because those are likely going to be your sold comps on the appraisal on the way out. And so that gives you an opportunity to know kind of what's going on in the neighborhood. Are prices trending up? Are they trending down? Are they flat? Are you seeing that buy levels are fetching more than try levels, etc.? So it just gives you an opportunity to really nail down your value as you continue through your due diligence process. So some important formulas as you're looking at those three numbers, you know, your three variables on a deal are your purchase, your repairs, and your after repaired value. So once you nail those three down, you can kind of work through this. So this is kind of a general guideline of what you should do. If your purchase and repairs divided by the after repaired value are 70% or less, it's a good deal. This is one you should lock up immediately, assuming you're working with good numbers. If it's between 70 and 75, you should still profit on the deal, but you just want to make sure you run your numbers and make sure that there's it's still a good deal for you. If you're between 75 and 80%, the deal will probably be profitable, but you got to really understand the numbers. On a lower price deal, like under about 150, an 80% loan to value is going to be challenging to be profitable because although you're kind of in there on a percentage standpoint, there just isn't enough dollars in the deal once you start eating up a lot of things that are fixed costs like closing costs and different things like that. Typically 75 to 80% will work on higher price points where there's more dollars in the deal. And then if your purchase and repairs total 80% or more of the after repaired value, it probably doesn't make sense to move forward on that deal unless there's something unique about the deal that you can do well in. Here's an example. I bought a house a few years ago, and it wasn't the best deal that I was able to find, but what I did was the repairs were like 15 or 20 grand, but they were the repairs that could be done very quickly. The siding, windows, and the roof made up most of the repair number. I can do all of that in about 2 weeks. So once I was able to get through that, then it gave me the opportunity to get into a deal that was a little tighter, knowing that that it would still be profitable. And I knew it'd be a quick turn time too because of how fast I can get the repairs done. So it's different for everyone. Max loan, this is the method I'll show you, basically going to be your after repaired value times 70% for our loan. and then your monthly payment. You're just gonna, most rehab loans are gonna be interest-only loans. So all you have to do is take your interest rate times your loan amount and divide it by 12 to get an idea of what your monthly payments are going to be. So what then we're going to show financing, and then we're going to jump into the numbers on the deal. So what kind of financing will you use? Are you going to use bank financing? Are you going to use hard money financing? Are you going to partner with somebody? Do you have cash? How you finance a deal will greatly impact the profit on the deal. Your down payment, if you're working with bank financing, you may have 20, 25% down, or maybe 20 to 25% of your costs. If you're using hard money, like with our loan, you likely would have little or no money into the deal. So you want to understand that so that you can really understand how much capital it's going to take in order to get the deal done. Are you paying origination? I mean, most loans come with origination. Hard and private money might be a little bit higher, where bank financing will be a little bit lower, but you might have a slower time frame to get to closing. You may have to have more money into the deal. The closing costs, what are your closing costs? You're working with the title company. You're going to have title policy, you're going to have prepaids, you may have taxes, you're going to have insurance that needs to be in place, so you need to understand all the closing costs for the deal. I see people are typing in questions. Keep those coming. When we get to a point here a little bit, a couple slides down the road, I'll answer all of them. Holding costs. This is the piece that most people miss, is the holding costs. This is going to include your payments, your monthly payments on the loan, how long it's going to take you to hold it. It's going to take into account even like your utilities or insurance and tax costs that you're going to have on a deal, and how you need to run those numbers so that you know you have an accurate number when you come up with your profit. How much cash is required to do the deal? If you have down payment, do you also need to meet a reserve requirement? Does the bank or lender require you to have some money into it and also some money to roll with the punches in the deal? So you just want to make sure you completely understand your financing. Now, when I go through how to analyze a deal, I'm assuming you've already worked to get your financing in place. I would definitely not suggest that you go out and are looking at properties, making offers, and doing all this work if you don't know if your financing is lined up. So I would certainly suggest that you do that before you're out there making offers on properties. Because the example I'm going to give you is based on our loan, I'm going to show you what borrowing from us looks like. You can use the deals that I show on any type of transaction. You'll just need to adjust the numbers for the type of financing that you're going to use. What we do is we'll lend 100% of your costs up to 70% of the after repaired value. So if your purchase, repairs, and closing costs total 70% or less, we'll finance 100% of your costs on the deal. We pull credit, but it's not real important to us. We just want to make sure there's no tax liens or judgments. Our reserve requirement is 6 months of interest payments, or 7.5% of the loan. We do document income, but we don't typically use it to approve unless, or to deny a loan unless somebody doesn't have enough income to support their outlays and the deal. Fast closings is pretty typical for us to close within 2 weeks. Right now a little slower with appraisals, but I've closed the deal in just a matter of a couple of days before, so we could certainly get to the closing table quickly. You could close in the name of an entity, your personal name, however you take title doesn't matter to us. We just want to help you be successful in the deal, and maybe what the entity or personal name that you use may have to do with what your exit strategy is to make sure that that's going to be smooth. Typical loan is 4 points origination, 15% interest only on a 9-month balloon. I'm going to take a couple minutes here to answer a few of the questions that have come in before I move on. One of the questions is when you're working with a wholesaler who's not giving you the actual address, only give you a general location, what do you do there? Typically what I'm seeing when wholesalers aren't giving the full address, or at least giving the block that it's on, this kind of depends on how much time you have. If you have enough time and they say that it's on the 4000 or 4200 block of Smith Road, then and they typically have a picture of the front of the house, I'm probably going to drop down a little Google Man and walk up and down the street until I find a house that looks like the house and get a good idea of it. Or reach out to the wholesaler and just say, hey, I'm interested in this deal. Can you provide the full address? Because I'd rather spend 10 minutes on my computer trying to find that house up and down the street than an hour in the car driving there and back to find it may not work for me. So that's something you may consider. But even when you have the general area, you should, with the street name, you should have a good idea of whether or not it's going to be on a busy street or not. Someone asked if we can refer wholesalers, without knowing what market you're in and that kind of stuff. Hard to help, but happy if you want to give me a call, we can discuss them. A couple of people looking for an example, and we're going to jump into that here shortly. The purchase price plus repairs divided by ARV. That's exactly right. Somebody's asking how do you come up with that percentage? You're going to take your purchase price plus the repairs and divide by the after repaired value to come up with that percentage, the 70, 75, etc. Typical closing costs, we'll cover that in the example here next. Somebody's asking what type of commission should you negotiate with a broker when you're doing multiple deals. We'll be happy to cover that in a couple slides here as we go through an example. And someone's asking about the loan. How does the 4 points compare to the 15%? What does that look like in loan payments? I'll be happy to show you that as we jump into the example here. The monthly payment formula is just going to be your interest rate times your loan amount divided by 12. So if you're borrowing from the bank and it's a 6 or 7% interest rate, your loan amount times 7% divided by 12 will give you your monthly payment. And another loan question about the 4 points and 15%. 4 points is, a point is 1% of the loan amount in origination or a fee to provide the money. So 4 points would be 4% of the loan amount. 15% is 15% interest only, the interest paid on the loan. So from here, we'll move forward to some examples, and as you have questions, please continue to type them in, and we'll get to them when we have a good stopping point. This is the worksheet that we're about to work through. You can download from our website at this link, pinefinancialgroup.com/resources, and you can download it for free. And now I'm going to run through that example and show you what it looks like. So what to offer? This is kind of the back of the napkin, the easy real estate formula to figure out whether or not you've got a profitable deal. And so let's go through that. What does it look like? So if your max loan, as I just covered with our loan, is 70% of the after repaired value, you're going to start with your after repaired value, which in this case we're going to use $300,000. We times that by 70% and we get $210,000. So that's what the loan you'll get at max loan, 70% of the after repaired value. You're going to want to figure out what your closing costs are on that loan. So you're going to take your loan of $210,000 times 4 points, as we covered earlier, 4% of the loan amount, plus about $1,500 for closing costs, which are going to include title fees, prepaids, closing escrow fees, that kind of stuff to the title company. So in this case, when we take 210 times 4% plus $1,500, we get $9,900. So $9,900 is the closing cost in this scenario. Our max loan is $210,000. Our repairs are $50,000. We know our closing costs are $9,900, which we covered before. So this tells us the max amount that we should offer on this property for a no money down deal. So we take our loan amount minus the repairs minus the closing costs. $150,100 is how you can figure out what you should offer on this property, assuming your numbers to be accurate, for a no money down deal with our loan. So we did this in a matter of about a minute and a half. So with good numbers, you should be able to figure out pretty quickly how to analyze a quick offer on a property. So now we go into a little bit more detail, and this is important because it really takes into account the profit. A lot of these numbers we already know from the previous slide, and so it should be pretty easy to see. So you have an after repaired value of $300,000, and the first thing I like to subtract out is the profit. I would need to get paid first. You know, as a real estate investor, you're taking the risk, you're getting the financing, you're managing the contractors, you're putting it on the market, you're doing everything you can to get this property sold. You need to figure out that whether it's going to make money for you or not. And too often, you know, we might change that number because we think we should make a little less. If there's a specific number that you need to get deals done, let's say your minimum profit on a deal is $20,000 or $25,000, start with that number. But I do think you need to scale that number based on the after repaired value of the property, because if you're willing to make $25,000 on a $150,000 house, I think that's great. If you're willing to make $25,000 on a $350,000 house, I think that's bad. That's not a good business decision. You're taking a lot of risk to squeeze out a pretty small profit. So you need to decide what works for you in the profit category and use that. Now over here on the right, we have a picture of a pen doing math, and you might remember back to grade school, you never did your math in pen. But when you're running numbers on a deal, I always like to use a pen and paper, because what happens is when we use spreadsheets or apps or different things, we tend to go back and say, oh, well, that offer's a little bit too far from what they're asking. You know, on this one, I think the after repaired value is 315. It's not 300. Or, you know, I don't need to make 50. If I could squeeze 35 on this one, that'd give me a pretty good end to the year. We start to change the numbers on the deal. Or we say, oh, it's not 50 in repairs. I was being conservative. Maybe it's only 42. We start to change the numbers on the deal to make ourselves feel better. And when you have a pen, you have to actually cross it out. There's something mental about doing that. When you're working off a spreadsheet, you're just punching the numbers until you get the result that you want at the bottom. So let's just be careful with that when you're running your numbers. Your closing cost of purchase, which we covered on the previous slide, of $9,900. That was the 4 points plus $1,500. The repairs we knew from the previous slide of $50,000 on this deal. Now we have the holding costs. The holding costs are very important. I mentioned earlier this is something that a lot of people struggle with, so we're going to get real detailed into the holding costs. So you're going to start with your interest payments, because you're going to be making those. What I like to do typically on a fix and flip deal is use 6 months of holding costs. Now, every deal is different. If you have $100,000 in repairs, you're probably not going to use a 6-month time frame for your repairs. It might take you a little bit longer, maybe a little shorter. I don't know, but we have to consider we have to close on it, get the repairs done, get it listed, get it under contract, and get it resold. So what's a good time frame to do that? I'm going to use 6 months on this one with a $50,000 budget. So what's your interest? The interest, as we showed before, is the loan amount times 15%, and in this case divided by 12 to get our monthly payment, times 6 to get our 6 months. Or you could take the 15% times the loan amount, which was $210,000, and just times 0.15 divided by 2, because it's 6 months. So this is what your holding costs are. This is your payments on the loan. HOA. This particular property is not in an HOA, but if it was, it's important to note this. In the home that I live in, the HOA is cheap. It's only $47 a month. But there are some places, some condos and different things like that, where the HOA could be $400 a month. I flipped a condo the beginning of last year, and the HOA was like $350 a month. So it was important to get that thing sold, because that was real money every month. Your insurance, typical insurance would be about $150 a month for a property like this, using vacant property policy. Make sure that we're not using a landlord policy. Getting the right insurance on the property. Your taxes, this is information you can just get from the public record. If the taxes on this property are $1,680 a year, divide that by 2 for 6 months, we get the $840. Divide that, or you can divide by 12 to get the monthly, so you know what it's actually costing you to carry this property every month. Utilities, you know, $150. It could be long, could be short. It really depends on your market, the time of year. You know, when I'm doing a deal in the winter, and you walk in and your drywaller, he's got his drywall up and the texture, it's 95 degrees in there. He's got the furnace going so he can get his stuff dried. He's wearing, you know, a tank top and just enjoying it in there, but you have to consider who's paying the bill when it's cold out. In the summer, you might be overseeding and watering the front yard a lot. You might have shrubs, different landscaping that's going to cost money to keep those up. So you need to consider what the utilities are going to be on a house and the amount of power that's going to be used. Now, when you go on the market, you may have very little utility bill. If it's a winter, you're just keeping it warm enough so it's toasty when people go in. If it's a summer, you may not be doing anything, maybe watering the lawn. So you might save some money on the later months, but it's just good to know what that's going to cost you. So our total dollars here is $18,000, $390. And that's what the holding costs are on this loan. So now we go back to our next slide, and we're going to punch that in. So holding costs $18,390. So as we work through this, then we have concessions. Now, the market that I'm in Denver, paying concessions is not very active right now. Typically, you're getting offers above asking and usually without concessions. But you might consider a couple of different things on concessions. Maybe they came in and said, yeah, you know, we like this house, but the furnace is a little old, we should replace that, or you don't get a full price offer or something like that. You might just use that number to kind of reflect that. We're seeing less and less concessions in this marketplace. Your realtor fees, $15,000. So on this one, it's an even 5%. Some somebody asked earlier how you should negotiate with a real estate agent if you're doing a lot of deals. I'm sure we have a lot of real estate agents on the call. I suggest that you pay full freight or the full amount on your first few deals when working with somebody, especially if they're bringing you the deals and adding the value. Once you have a relationship together, you've done 2, 3, 4, 5 deals together, that's when I'm going to start asking for a discount on that. And if the realtor's taking a commission on the front end and they're making the money there, then I do think it's fair that they take a little bit less on the back end with you doing all of the work in that. Now, if they brought you the deal, I'm going to be a little bit more inclined to pay them more. If I found the deal on my own or got a wholesale deal and I'm fixing it up and put it on the market, I'm probably going to pay a little bit less in that scenario because they didn't have to do anything up to that point, and they're going to list a property that if you have a good relationship, they're going to know it's a nice house, how easy you are to work with, etc. So that's different for everyone, but keep in mind that it's definitely an opportunity to make a deal more profitable, but make sure that you've earned the right to ask for that discount. Closing costs to sell a property, we use 1% typically, and we use 1% typically for on a resale of a property for title fees. You're going to have your insurance, your title insurance premium. You're going to have some different fees that go to the title company when you sell the property. One thing to keep in mind is a hold open policy. If you're going to work with the same title company on the back end, you can get a hold open policy. Basically what that does is you pay more for the title insurance when you buy the property, usually a 10% premium. And then what happens when you resell the properties, you only pay the difference in insurance from your purchase price to your resale price rather than the full resale price. So then after we subtract out all of these numbers, we're going to come up with a max offer to see how it makes sense. And it's $147,710. Our previous offer was right around $150. So you can punch through it pretty quickly using 70% of after repaired value and know that there's going to be an opportunity to save or to make an offer on that property, and you go through it pretty quickly, or you can work through all of the numbers and make sure you select your the profit that you need to make on a deal and find that they might be similar. If you're somebody who's willing to take a little bit slimmer profit, you probably are going to want to go through the long hand like we just did to make sure that there's going to be you might be able to offer a little more for the property than me, who I'm going to probably want to get a minimum of 15% of the after repaired value on a property in order to do that deal. So the profit that you need, the type of financing that you have, the holding costs, all that stuff is going to be different for everybody who's on the webinar. So you'll have to decide what you're willing to accept on a deal and how that's going to how that's going to change your offer amount. So just be sure to keep that in mind when you're running numbers on your deal. As I mentioned, this is on our website. I'll show you just real quick where that goes. If you click that link, it'll take you to the free resources, and there's a handful of different things here. Two that I want to point out, this one that we just did was the max offer worksheet, is the second from the bottom. You can click here, it'll open in PDF. You can print as many of them as you like. And the last one on here is the scope of work. And what this does is helps you take a uniform approach when you're putting bids together or putting in the ability to put the numbers on the paper. And I'll show you what that scope of work looks like just to give you an idea. This is really important when analyzing a deal. We're going to talk about this a little later, but I just want to show you what we use, and you can download this for free as I just showed you. You're going to put some information up here about the bedrooms, the bathrooms, finished square feet, how many cars. You might take some notes here, what type of finishes that you're going to make on the property, if you're moving any walls, whether you need an engineer, if you're going to add any square footage, if you're going to change the configuration to the property, if you're going to be finishing the basement, different things about the property. And then you just kind of dive in and you go room by room, and there's a bunch of items here that are filled in so that you can get an idea of how or all the line items so you don't forget something. Cabinets, counters, flooring, you can see here appliances. Everything is listed for each room, so you can go through and punch in a number here to make sure that you're getting accurate numbers. Another place this is really handy for you is to use it when you're getting bids from contractors so that you can get apple-to-apples bids. If you use this and you've listed out everything you need to do and you ask them to bid it on your sheet or move their bid to your sheet, then you can compare them side by side much more easier than just a mashup version you get from them. You got exterior, you've got plumbing, electrical, flooring, so you can just go through this and you can make punch in all of the numbers. And this is actually the spreadsheet that we use when we close a loan to get the draws going. So just a good opportunity to have something to walk through a property, especially if you've never done it before, so you don't miss anything. We got a couple of questions here that I'm just going to buzz through real quick. Someone's asking, when you buy the property, do you pay 6%? The seller typically pays the commission in most states, as far as I know. So you're not going to pay anything when you buy the property. They're going to get a commission paid from the seller, but you might use that to pay less on the way out. Someone asked, why isn't your loan in your holding costs just the interest? Well, there's no amortization on the loan. It's interest only, so you're accounting for the loan interest that's being paid as you go along. Attorney's fees, is there a breakdown? When I say title fees, I know some states use attorney closing, some states use title companies. They should be very similar in the amounts. If you want to understand what a breakdown is on those, I would just contact the title company and say, hey, can I have a fee sheet, or can you provide something to me to give me an idea of what the closing costs are going to be? Someone asked, how do you justify a homeowner and offer a price that's dramatically below the appraised value of the home? Well, let's remember that the appraised value of the home is the after repaired value. This is after you've done the repair. So in our example, this is after you've put in $50,000 into the deal. What I typically find is that somebody who needs to get out of the house is more concerned about about the amount they're going to get and how quickly you're going to close than how much profit you're going to make on the deal. So I know that it looks drastic when you say, well, you're offering 50% of the value of the house, but in order to be profitable in this business, that's exactly what you need to do, and we're funding those deals every week, a few a week, so it's definitely possible. But you can even buy stuff on the MLS in some markets that will work for these numbers. Someone asked, how do we calculate the interest? You take the loan amount in this case, which was $210,000, times 15% divided by 12, and they just commented that they got that. Perfect. So now we're going to move on from here. Another way to do it is we have a calculator on our website, and if you just go to pinefinancialgroup.com, and then it's fix and flip calculator, it'll show up on the right side. If some browsers, it won't show up on the right side. If it doesn't, you can just literally Google Pine Financial Group fix and flip calculator. So this gives you the information. So using the 150 that we had earlier and the repairs of 50,000, the after repaired value of the 300, just to stay consistent with our example. Optional holding costs, I'll just put maybe 2,000 here for some of those items, taxes, that kind of stuff. And your earnest money, let's say the earnest money is $2,000. I understand there's going to be a slight delay from what you can see from when I punch it in, so I'll try to stay slow here. So you hit calculate, and immediately it's going to pop up and give you what the profit would be, which is up here on the top of the screen. I must have hit something wrong here. I guess our house wasn't valued enough at only $30,000. So let's try this again. We'll calculate, and net profit is $46,000, cash to close $10,250 based on the numbers that we had here, so about $46,000 in profit. So let's see, how do we come up with that number? So when you click this bottom button at the top, it'll break down every number that's here. So your purchase price, rehab, ARV, earnest money, everything. Interest rate, how long it's going to take, what your monthly payment's going to be, sales price, your loan repayment, closing costs if you were paying 10%, or maybe that defaults to 9%. I'll show you in a minute what your gross profit is. Sometimes I see wholesalers advertising gross profits. Let's understand that gross profits do not put food on your table. Net profits do. So we need to understand this is the money we had into the deal. This was our holding costs, and the closing costs for paying the agent, all that stuff. Net profit, $46,000. So how do we come up with that? Click the little gear here. Your purchase, your financing. So if you're paying 4 points with us, it's here. If you're paying 2 points with a bank, it's there. You drag it out here to 10 points. I don't know where that's legal, but this will give you an idea of what those numbers are. How much is it going to cost you to sell it? We used to always use 10%, 3% for the buyer's agent, 3% for the seller's agent, 3% in concessions. So you knew you're going to pay and 1% for title. Now that you're not paying concessions, maybe you're using 6 or 7%, depends. You can move the interest rate down to 8, up to 18, and your time down to 3 and up to 18 months. So it just gives you an idea of what you can do to use this calculator and kind of how it'll change the numbers on the deal. So if we change it the way that we did, up and down, you'll make 8,000, you have some money to close in, etc. So pretty straightforward on how that works, but gives you an idea. So we'll jump back to the PowerPoint. So that's the calculator. So now that you've ran all the numbers, what do? You get in the car. You go look at the property. Remember we said earlier we don't like to get in the car unless we know it's going to be a deal, something that we can be profitable in. So now we're going to get in the car and run out to the property and see that everything there is what we expected. So we visit the property. Now this is where we're actually going to estimate the repairs. Maybe we got an idea from the pictures or the wholesaler provided a number. This is where we're going to go Ronald Reagan and trust but verify and make sure that the repairs are in a number that are going to make sense. Did you find what you expected, or did you get out there and find that there was an addition on the back of the house that looks kind of hodgepodgey? You don't know if it's going to work. It's going to be expensive to replace, where there's some structural issues. Did the house need more work than you expected? Did it need less than you expected? Those are different things that you can do. The scope of work, we went through that spreadsheet. That's a good opportunity to walk through the house and fill that in and get a real good idea of what your repairs are going to be, hopefully in less than 20 minutes or so. You're going to drive the area, see the area, drive the comps. You were looking at comps in the beginning to get an idea of the value when you're figuring out your after repaired value. Let's drive past those and see what they look like. Maybe the picture on the internet wasn't great. You get there and find the lawn is beautiful. The house is really well manicured. It's got some features that the house that you had you weren't expecting to do, or maybe you find it's exactly what you thought. So it gives you the opportunity to run those comps and just see that it's exactly what you expected in the neighborhood. After you've been to the property, now you know, were there any changes in anything you saw? Were the repairs higher or lower? Was there something that you needed a second opinion on? Was the house the accurate size, or was it listed incorrectly in the MLS? So would that change the comps that you use? The condition, was it in better condition or worse condition than what you were expecting? How will that change your numbers? The comps, after you drove past the comps, did you find that the properties were similar to what you expected or had already saw on the MLS or whatever you're using to comp properties, or were they not? Now that you have all this information, you can take a second look at the numbers and make sure that your value will still stand. If you saw something that wasn't going to work or wasn't going to make it a deal for you, now you move on. But if it does appear that's still going to make a deal for you, then you're going to want to go ahead and lock up the deal. So if it's a MLS deal, you're going to go ahead, contact your agent, or if you are the agent, make the offer. Let them know you saw the house, you know what it's going to take, and you'd like to get an offer in and as quick as you can. It's a wholesale deal. You're going to let the wholesaler know, hey, I'm ready to sign a contract. Let's get this deal going. Let's remember that the biggest difference between MLS deals and for wholesale deals, the MLS deal, you're going to put up earnest money. That's typically, you're going to be able to get that back if you run into a snag on the deal through inspection or something like that. Wholesale deal, typically the money you put down is not refundable. So let's understand that if you're giving them $5,000, you better be pretty sure that this is a deal that's going to work for you and all the numbers work. Hopefully not the first deal you've ever analyzed. If it's off market, you sat down with somebody and you decide, you walk through the house and said, okay, this is the house that I want to buy, get that contract signed before you leave, or a very strong commitment, because once you leave, you've opened the door for someone else to maybe potentially get that house. So let's get a commitment and get a deal signed. If it's a partner deal, somebody brought it to you, now you have the information, the details. Let's dive in a little further. Are we going to JV? What do the percentages look like? Who's putting up the money? Who's getting the financing? How does that work? You're going to work through that and get the deal locked up. Post-contract due diligence. So now you've really hustled, you got across town, you did what you had to do to lock the property up. Now we have to see some things you might do after you're under contract. Property inspection. I've actually never got a property inspection from a property inspector on a property that I've purchased, wholesale or off of the MLS. I feel confident enough in my experience to walk through a house and know whether or not it's something I'm willing to move on. And if I miss something, it shouldn't be something big enough that's going to kill the deal for me. So everyone's experience is different. If it's your first deal, I would certainly suggest that you get an inspection just so you can learn more about the process, what they're looking for, what you should be looking for. If this is your 10th deal, you know whether or not you need an inspection on a property, and that's up to you to decide. Sewer scope. I've done some sewer scopes, some houses I decide not to. It has a lot to do with the age of the property, the condition, maybe the area. Is it more modern, newer house? There's PVC, or is it an old part of town where they might have clay or rolled roof plumbing or something like that, and you want to take a look at it and make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. Great tool for 100, 150 bucks to run a sewer scope and just know what the condition of that sewer is going to be, because there's a very high likelihood that your buyer on the flip side is going to want to get a sewer scope. And if you've already done it, it looks clean, maybe you just provide it to them and take that off of their conscience. Contractor bids. If you don't have contractors you regularly work with, now that you're under contract and you have an idea of where you need to be, this is where you hopefully can get some bids while you're under contract rather than waiting until you close. You may find, the contractor may find something along the way that it's like, oh man, I don't know if this deal is going to work for you because did you see this foundation issue, or did you know this addition on the back is not permitted, or you know, when you came out and put this house under contract there was snow on the roof, and now that we can see it, we know that that roof needs to be replaced. So I'd really encourage you to get your bids together, your material list, that kind of stuff while you're under contract, so that when you can close you can get started right away. Your financing, you know, whether you're working with us at Pine Financial or a bank or a private lender, whoever it may be, you're going to use all this diligence and work that you've put together to present this deal to them and get a commitment on the financing as soon as possible. Would you like to be able to write contracts where you need 45 days to close, or would you like to write contracts in a market where you can close in a week or two? And that may be the difference in whether or not you get the deal. The ability to analyze it quickly and close quickly. Had a deal I bought in, gosh, it was already in February. I had some 1031 money I wanted to place, and I found a great deal, or it's exactly what I was looking for. It was on the MLS. I made a full price offer, closed in 1 week. I was actually leaving town the next day for a week, so I actually didn't think we'd get to closing in that week because sellers were out of town, this, that, and the other. Sure enough, they pulled it together. We closed in 1 week, offered them full price, closed in 1 week. I bet they probably could have got a little bit more for it, but there's a certain amount of comfort that comes in knowing you have an offer. If it closes this week, you're paid, you're done. If it doesn't, you only lose a week. So how you finance a property could really affect how you get the deal done. So there's a few more questions. We'll go ahead and jump in and answer these, and then if there's anyone else out there that has a question you're thinking about, we have a few minutes, so go ahead and type those in and let's see what we can find. Someone asked if the Mayo ever signals that it's not a deal. The biggest thing is for figuring out if it's a deal or not on the calculator is typically shown by the amount of money that you have to bring to closing. If you're doing a $100,000 deal and you've got to bring $30,000 at closing, you're going to know pretty quickly it's not going to be a great deal. Or the profit doesn't meet a minimum criteria for you. If you punch it in there and the profit's going to be $8,000 on a deal, and you think, oh, you know, I'd like to make $8,000, I don't know too many people are going to fund that deal for you. That's the difference of a furnace, sewer, or a price adjustment. So you want to make sure the margins are there for you. So that's really a decision for you to make. It doesn't send out a red flag that says, hey, you shouldn't do this deal, but there should be enough indicators between the cash to close and the profit to let you know whether or not it's a deal you should pass on. Another question, is it ever customary to contract before seeing and the condition and due diligence? Yes and no. I've made a lot of offers on property that I hadn't seen before, and sometimes I see them just a few days before the closing. It kind of depends on how it works. If it's a neighborhood that I'm really comfortable with and kind of know the condition of the property, I'd be happy to contract on it. But this is what I like to do. Make the offer. If it sticks, a lot of times, like on MLS, I try to give myself 48 hours to deliver earnest money. And so then if it sticks, I'm under contract now, I've got basically 2 days to go do it before I have to put my earnest money up. I wouldn't suggest that you just don't put up the earnest money more than about once, because it's going to create some problems with you, especially if it's the same agent that works in an area. But you could put it under contract with the out that you need to get your due diligence. Sometimes this might happen with a property that's tenant occupied. The seller doesn't want to deal with the tenants or this or that, or they don't want a bunch of showings, so they say, we'll allow you in after we're under contract. Of course, in that scenario, you would have some outs in the contract to be able to get out of it. Someone's asking if we can explain the balloon on a hard money loan. So basically, when you take a hard money loan, you're making interest-only payments, and so because you're only making the interest-only payments, when you sell the house, the full amount, or the balloon, is due. That's where you're going to pay the full amount of the loan. Or if you refinance it, you'd pay the full amount. A number of people asking if we're recording this. I am recording this, but I have to tell you that I am not the most tech savvy individual, so there's a high likelihood this will make our YouTube page in about a week or so, but if it doesn't, sorry. Someone asked how fast we can close. For us, 2 weeks is pretty typical. Really depends on appraisal timing right now. But we've got a deal in on Monday that we're going to close on Thursday. So depends on how strong the deal is and how strong the borrower is. And if we worked with the person before, if we worked with them before, it makes it a lot easier to close quickly. How long should the inspection period be for newbies in the Denver market? That's a great question. What I like to do when I write a contract is to give too many outs. So your agent, if they don't have a ton of experience or don't know how risky you're willing to be, are going to ask you, they're going to give you an out for title, inspection, appraisal, loan conditions, insurance deadline. So now you look at a contract as a seller and you say, wow, this person has 8 ways to get out of this contract without me being able to keep their earnest money. Or I look at an offer from Travis that had a 6-day inspection, 14-day close or something like that. And the offers are similar. Which one are you going to go with? What I like to do is give a 7 or maybe 10-day inspection if I need one. I typically try, in our market, try to write them without an inspection. If you can't make the decision on whether or not you should buy a house in 10 days, then you have a lot of practice you need to do before you're going to be successful in this business. You should really be able to make a decision on whether you're going to buy a house in probably less than an hour because the market is that strong. And it gives you the ability to analyze the deal quickly, know your repairs, know your value, and know how you're going to finance it and get it closed, not spend a ton of time on it. So give yourself as much time as you need, but understand that some people aren't willing to take that much time or give you a ton of time. Someone asks about the appraisal. We do require appraisals on the properties. So what that's for is the after repaired value so that we can lend you 70% of that. Our appraisers we only work with a few in each market, and we track them over time. They're all within about 3% of what it actually sells for, so we feel like they do a great job. We can do loans without appraisals, but we're going to lower the loan amount pretty significantly so that we're in a good place on it. Is there any other questions out there that we can answer for you before we wrap up this call? Someone asked about if you see wholesalers sending out deals and they're not sold in a month, is that a red flag? 100%. I have a couple of opinions on this, but if you see a wholesale deal hit your inbox, it's probably not a great deal for a couple of reasons. Anybody who's wholesaling any number of properties, it has a kind of preferred buyers list, right? So they're going to call 8, 10, 12 people, and if they all pass on the deal, you have to ask yourself, should you be doing that deal? Now, you might have a different track on it. Maybe it's a neighborhood you like to be in. You can do the repairs less. You're going to keep it as a rental. There's different things. But the Denver market's gotten a little weird in the fact that we see wholesalers send out a property and then send it out with a price reduction, send it out with a price reduction. You just have to run your numbers and stick to them. And if you run the numbers the first time and it's not a good deal, and they come back with a $10,000 price reduction, and then it's probably still not a good deal for you. But if you were close on the deal, like, it's a little thin, but almost, and then they send that price reduction, you've already done the work, so you know that you can jump in and get that deal done. Somebody's asking about estimating repairs. This is one of the most challenging pieces for newer investors especially. So I would really suggest that you practice. You walk properties, you meet other investors, you just really practice, because in hot markets, if you can't walk through a property and know the repairs like in less than 15 or 20 minutes, then I don't know that you're going to be successful until things really cool off. So I would really practice. Go to Home Depot, learn what things cost, get an idea, ask a lot of questions, and kind of build that to know what it's going to take. Someone asked if Pine Financial lends on rehab costs. We'll lend all of your costs, purchase, repairs, and closing costs, up to 70% of after repaired value. The appraisal, when does the appraisal take place? The appraisal is going to take place after you're under contract. So as soon as we get the contract and the scope of work from you, we're going to use that to order the appraisal. The appraisal is for after repaired value, so we can make our loan based on the after repaired value, not on the as-is value. How do you find reliable contractors? That depends on which market you're in. It's challenging out there. In some markets, the labor market has been so challenging. Find referrals. Find other people in your network that are doing deals that can help you find good contractors. Someone's asking about what to offer on the buy and hold. There's a PMT box. What you want to do is find what the payment on your loan is going to be. And if you use a good mortgage calculator like Bankrate or some of the different online mortgage calculators, just Google it. You can figure out exactly what your payment's going to be to figure out your cash flow. Okay, there's just a few more questions here, and then we're going to wrap it up. I'm going to answer what's already in here. If you ask a question after this, we're not going to answer it because we're going to have to end the recording here shortly. People are asking me about specific wholesalers. Happy to chat about that if you want to give me a call. Do we have trainings for calculating after repaired value? We do. We did it as a webinar once, and we're doing that class probably once every other month-ish in Denver, and actually in Minnesota. So if you're in one of those markets, keep an eye out for that. Do you pull permits? I would absolutely suggest that you're pulling permits now. The information is so widely available to home inspectors. Before it was challenging for them to find. They might even have to go down to the office. Now everything's online or with a phone call, and you better bet that the home inspector is calling on the resale of a property to see if you pulled the permit or not. On a rental property, that's up to you. It kind of depends on what you're doing. Who does the appraisals? We have appraisers, third-party licensed appraisers that do the deal. Someone's asking about the sheet that we went through, the purchase, repairs, closing costs, and anything over 210, the buyer, do they bring that to closing? So we'll fund your purchase, repairs, and closing costs up to 70% of the after repaired value. If it's less than 70%, it's no money down. If it's more than 70%, you would bring the difference. Only lend in Colorado and Minnesota. Someone asked, what does pulling permits mean? That'll be the last, will be two, well, that question and one more. That means pulling building permits at the county to make sure, city or county, to make sure that the work is permitted and inspected so that it meets the deal. What is the timing for a loan process on a wholesale deal? Need the deal to be provided before submitting non-refundable earnest money. This is one of those things you're asking, how can I put up my earnest money if I don't know if I can get a loan, and vice versa, chicken or the egg maybe. If you are out there making offers on property, I would suggest that you have financing lined up. We can take an application, we can run through it and see that it's going to be a good fit to work together, so you know that you have the ability to close on that. Now, you're going to have to give up non-refundable earnest money. So how do you know if you have the right after repaired value, or the repairs are correct, or all of these different things? These are things that investors have to practice in this market. It's very challenging if you're brand new to real estate to be able to analyze a deal quick enough and then give non-refundable earnest money, $5,000. Everybody's risk tolerance is different in that arena. So I have to suggest that if you're not comfortable giving up that earnest money, then you have to spend more time practicing on the numbers and practicing on the numbers and the ability to put together a good deal. After repaired value repairs everything. So that's it for tonight. I appreciate everybody joining us, and we will record this. We'll have it out on the YouTube, and then my contact information is there. If we didn't get your question answered, please feel free to give me an email, or shoot me an email, or give me a call. I'd love to run through that information with you. I'd love to fund your deals, or just talk about real estate in general. I'd like to be available to people, whether they're new or experienced, to help and answer in any way we can. So thanks for joining us tonight, and have a good night.